Good evening, dear friends. This is our 33rd video of the Divine Order and the Universe Reading and Commentary series. Welcome, dear Oya.
Good evening, everyone. We are together again. And this time at the evening of a day of freedom.
Well, with partial freedom.
Still, after 17 days, it feels good. And the streets were full of people. I guess, they were too bored to be careful around others.
Yes, we must be more careful on behalf of ourselves and of others.
But observing the dominant emotional habits of people, I don't think we can do this. Because people want to gather in large groups, be it for sharing sadness over the ones they lost to the pandemic, or for sharing happiness of surviving the infections. Well, the choices we make, you know.
Today, I talked to a friend of mine and she told me, for the last 6 or 7 months, I am radically examining, reviewing my life. I am experiencing profound confrontations. This was good for her, but not every person can utilize such periods of isolation. Mostly, they avoid such close examination of their life. But of course, each of us can manage as much we can, as much as our own capacity. All right, let's start reading from where we stopped last week. Now we will study a little more the relations between the dualities of the conscience mechanism ensuring an increase in essence knowledge. We have said that in the conscience mechanism, the two opposing appearances of which one is directed to duty and the other is directed to earthly cravings, consist only of realities following and preparing each other. According to its order, the same reality can be directed both to earthly cravings and to duty. Where it needs to be obliged to, it is directed to duty, and where it needs to be left behind, it is directed to earthly cravings. Therefore, just like the conclusions of earthly cravings, that is, the essence knowledge brings about the riches of the past by locking on each other and preparing the future ones, likewise, the future ones pave the way for the ones to come, who are directed to the plan of duty. Here, in order to be able to explain the respective states of the opposing components directed to duty and to earthly cravings, with more material similes, we go back to the example of the bar magnet we have previously given. Let us hold this bar magnet with its positive side is up and its negative side down, in the direction of a plumb line. In this state, the bar magnet's exact higher half and exact lower half contain equal amounts of opposite magnetism to each other. Now, if we lengthen this bar upwards, that is, if we add magnetism to it from the higher part, the neutral point of the bar shifts and moves a little higher. Because some magnetism is added to the positive side, a flux of magnetism will start from positive to negative, and the equilibrium line moves up. If we do this from the lower part, the result reverses. The equilibrium line shifts a bit lower. This is a rough example, but it is useful in giving an intuition. This experiment indicates that although one is signed positive and the other is signed negative, the component on both sides of the bar is the same substance. Naturally, the conscience duality we symbolize with the bar magnet does not display such a simple state. That is, there are differences too great and too complex between its components to compare with the components of magnetism. Because of this, the reality differences here are not as simple as the positive, negative poles of the magnet. However, we give this example to impart a rough intuition of the workings of the conscience mechanism. So, if we hold the conscience, which we symbolize by a bar magnet, in the direction of the plumb line, with its higher component directed at duty in equilibrium with its lower component directed to earthly cravings, the value degrees of these components in the face of human comprehension, that is, again within the conscience mechanism itself, are equal to each other. And their equilibrium line, relative to the bar magnet symbol, is in the exact middle. If we lengthen this conscience bar upwards starting from its higher half, that is, if we add values to the higher parts near to the duty reality, the charge of the bar increases towards that part. And the previous equilibrium line remains below. In this case, respective equilibrium state of the directions of duty and earthly cravings becomes disrupted. However, the law of equilibrium cannot stand this disruption. As with the magnetic phenomena, until the equilibrium is restored, a flux starts from the increased value side to the decreased value side, from the duty side to the earthly craving side. This flux, of course, means that some value parts of the higher reality pass into the lower reality. Naturally, these values we mention, as explained above, are not for the aspect of reality that addresses the body belonging to matter and forms, but for the aspect addressing the being preoccupied with essence knowledge. These are essence knowledge values, and they are put into effect after myriad applications of the conscience mechanism. So, the start of this flux from positive side to negative side causes the disrupted equilibrium line to be restored to a level that is a little higher than the previous one. More correctly, some parts of the duty component values, by mixing amidst the earthly craving components, have elevated the level of earthly cravings a little. In this way, the level of essence knowledge and comprehension of essence knowledge reaches upward. Therefore, as the values belonging to the duty side of the conscience mechanism increase, the values of the higher direction flowing in the direction to the earthly cravings entail a shift of earthly craving direction towards the duty direction and the ascent of the equilibrium line between the two directions towards the knowledge of a plan of duty.
Yes, this is an informative passage. The book already stated the opposite sides of the conscience mechanism, namely, earthly cravings and duty, and now, in this passage we read the detailed explanation of this with the example of a bar magnet so we can visualize this mechanism in an easier manner. Two-sided, we can imagine this bar magnet like this pen. Vertical. Upper part is oriented to duty, and lower part is oriented to earthly cravings. And, dear friends, we are continuously going up and coming down within this bar magnet and trying to establish the balanced state, the neutral line. This is a two-sided mechanism, as you remember, the book stated this as a duality unit. So, its upper or higher component is towards the duty, and its lower component is towards the early cravings, and let's say, we add values of anger to this lower component, yet, as we experience and live the consequences of the reality of anger, we gradually pass to the reality of acceptance, and when the distance between these two components grows, the neutral line gets established at a higher point. Yes, we pass to the reality of acceptance. Yes, maybe anger is not that strong anymore, but we see that we cannot accept everyone as they are so easily. So, this upper point becomes the earthly cravings level of that reality, and we gradually continue upwards because our aim is to continue towards the duty component of the conscience mechanism. As we add values or influences to the upper or lower components of each reality, each state we are in at each moment, the value differentiation occurs, the equilibrium or balance of the system gets disrupted, and because it cannot stay unbalanced, it is established at a new neutral line right away. Let's say we experienced every possible degree and states of anger and completed this process, but of course, this may be done within a single lifetime. Still, we talk about generally processes we complete as we go through many, many lifetimes. As our being's essential knowledge accumulates and our being's comprehensions widens, in short, as our being gets more and more developed. Let's assume we reach the level of acceptance many lifetimes later, but still many tests and trials in a lifetime may make us angry again, then we fall down a little, but now, the upward pull of the acceptance is stronger, we easily remember its sublimating influence and spend effort to move upwards. That's why our learnings advance gradually, always a little bit higher, a little bit more. This example of bar magnet given in the book is practical and clear. We can easily visualize our states within a day on such a vertical line and detect at which part of the conscience mechanism we are mostly at.
I visualize it like this. Let's say, an earthly craving, a kind of selfishness reality is here and another reality at the top of it. Normally, we cannot make a high jump from bottom reality to upper one. The process is always up and down, but gradually, we move upwards towards the higher reality. Yet, depending on the results of tests and trials in life, more correctly, depending on our choices and decisions made each moment in each event, we can go down, but again, by learning as we live the consequences of our choices, we can go up again. So, this striving for the duty component of the conscience mechanism gradually occurs. Yet, as you said, let's assume a person becomes very experienced, gets very developed in a certain reality. Let's say that person is a healer. As a healer, the capacity, the skills, talents of that person got widened through many lifetimes. Yet, within another reality or a test and trial of life events, that person can use this talent at the earthly craving part of the equilibrium for money or power. That is, choices made at the duty component or at the earthly cravings component disrupts the equilibrium, yet still, they are the same substance, only difference is, one component is positive and the other is negative. Just like a magnet. However, if I make decisions and choices from the earthly craving side of the conscience mechanism, of course, I experience the suffering consequences of these, but this does not mean that my essence being loses any values. From the experiential side of the process, just because I was orientated to the negative side of the magnet, I have to comply the necessities this decision requires. I mentioned that because, when we consider the 500 to 700 lifetimes of a human being, they don't follow each other always as bad, negative, selfish, etc. We already read and discussed this topic in our previous videos. This process is more like swinging between two opposite sides. And we see this in the past life regression sessions. Lifetimes do not follow each other only at the one side of the pendulum. No, they swing to this or that side. For example, there are selfish lifetimes, which are also known as shadow lifetimes, when we suppress our knowledge, personal power, talents, etc. But also, we have altruistic lifetimes when we unselfishly sacrificed many things in the name of our community, our mission or task, etc. And of course, within each lifetime, the being does daily accounting during sleep and periodical accounting during that lifetime, and after death, in the spatium, the great accounting is done. And in general, there will always be some unfinished, incomplete parts left of the last or previous life plans. And in the next lifetime, the being will need to complete the cycles of those unfinished business from previous lifetimes. And because of this, a human being will encounter innumerable events, states, and situations and many numbers of other people, if needed, many times, repeatedly. So, in that sense, awareness is very important.
And the critical point in assuming that we completed a reality is at the test and trials life puts on our path. Actually, assuming this is an indication of earthly cravings, and the moment we say I learned this, I mastered that, the tests and trials of that level of earthly cravings begin to happen, as though asking, really? Did you internalize this? Is this knowledge really yours, now? Are you at the level to apply this properly? For example, I experienced this up and down swing a few days ago. I had an appointment with a client in my office and also, I had to withdraw money from the teller machine. I was in a haste and suddenly an old lady came up to me and told me, "Can you help me?" Well, I don't like encouraging beggars, but this lady was looking at me with such a nice expression that I couldn't say a firm no to her. I noticed that there is a queue at the front door of the bank, and because I had no time to spare, I told her, "Please forgive me, but I cannot help you now." Then I ran to the bank and saw that there was not a queue for the teller machine, so I withdrew money and ran back, hoping that I can catch the old lady on the road. And because she was walking slowly, I could catch her at the front of a supermarket. She didn't recognize me, and when I asked, "How can I help you?" she told me, "I have tea at home but no sugar. Can you buy me some sugar?" Because elderly cannot enter the shops due to the pandemic precautions, I told her to wait for me, and I went in and bought sugar. And the moment I gave the bag to her, she told me, please come home with me so we can drink tea together." I was like, aha, oh yeah, you wanted to help an old lady, but are you ready for this? From which component you are approaching to this helping issue? From earthly cravings? Like, oh, I am such a good person, helping that woman in need, or from the duty? Like, yes, I met the first meet of the old lady, but now, I need to express a kind but firm no to her because my client waits for me at the office. So, within such a short time, I had to make some comparisons and arrive at a decision. Please, don't misunderstand me. Of course I am not telling this to show you how a helpful person I am, but I like to underline the need to find and establish the neutral line after each going up and each coming down. A few minutes ago, there was a question about the neutral point or line in the chat box, so maybe, this can be a reply to that. If you remember, we had read a passage about the need of forgetting the lived part of the realities. In that sense, we experienced an event, we made a choice or decision and acted upon it. And this establishes a neutral point or line. That's the important part of the process. The other details of the event lose their importance for the being. However, this state is valid if we really are at the duty component, and we know that it is not always for most of us. Because, sometimes we cannot forget the details of the lived events, no matter how much we try, and this is an indication that this event and its details affected us strongly, hence, our earthly craving side. If we get stuck or stagnant in a state, then, this is our task to transform this state within ourself. And, our being and all other beings in duty will ensure that many events will occur to make us change that state. Indeed, we live to change such states. Yes, until we can internalize the knowledge within an event or a state and consequently, until we can get ready for the knowledge of an event or a state at the next level, we will always get tested and checked by the events of life, by our relations, by our inner world. This is the experience we talk about all the time. We are always in a state of experience. And this is so precious and valuable for us. Because, as we discussed last week, all of these experiences and bits of knowledge we acquire will be transformed to the essence knowledge and stored in our being. In other words, this is the richness we receive from life.
And most of the major encounters or staging of events, they happen only once. If you miss it, you can't relive it. It's like a train or a window of opportunity, and if you miss it, there may not be another chance. 5 or 6 years ago, I was in a rough patch and had to make a radical decision. I couldn't sleep and was thinking for hours, should I do it or not? Should I take initiative or not? And it was 5 a.m. and I was still awake. So, I decided to watch a TV series named Sense8, but my mind was still running around the same questions. In that episode, one of the characters couldn't act properly in a major situation, and as a result, everything in his life was now slipping away from his fingers, and he said, "In the end, we'll all be judged by the courage of our hearts." And I really heard this so much that I felt shaken. As though I had heard not the sound waves, but the influence of the sentence as a reply to my question. This was a moment I really understood what comprehension means. Because at that moment, I knew that if I don't make a decision right now, I wouldn't be able to make a decision later or ever. I would never find that chance again. This was such a strong synchronicity that I couldn't miss it. There are such moments in our life, and if we can assess the events and situations by saying with intention, as we do in the Anatolian culture, "Let it be for the good of the whole," then we shift to the upper component. But if we say, "Let it be for my own good," then we shift to the lower component. Of course, the appearances like good or bad are only valid for us, for our senses and for our worldly thinking. For our being, there is no such categories. All is experience for our being. And we must remember the fact that what we name as lower reality was the higher reality for the previous reality below it. So, gradualness is the way of this process, this developmental mechanism. We cannot make a high jump at one. Therefore, we need to appreciate the gradualness of those processes. For example, when we focus on the summit, the distance we have to cover may seem too long and almost impossible. Yet when we focus on each step and give its due before taking next one, and the then suddenly you notice that you already arrived at the summit. However, human psyche tends to warp things and perceptions, and because of this, our task is not so easy. In a world of appearances and illusions, we still do a good job. So, we must remember to appreciate our efforts and achievements. These are not easy to pass through processes.
You reminded me, our example of a strong synchronicity. Years ago, we were trying to renovate and enlarge the center of our society, and we were doubting if we can do this or not. With another friend, we were driving towards the center and deep in discussing pros and cons, and suddenly, in front of us, there was a wall, a huge slogan written at. Of course, we can. It was a billboard for a bank, but at that moment, it was an influence our beings made it too obvious to ignore for us. We looked at each other, laughed and said, "All right, then," and drove on. In that sense, as we live through an event, if we can be more perceptive, more open to such messages within the event, this may guide us to a better direction, decision, and action. And as you said, the best way is having this intention, may the results be for the good of the whole.
Yes, we add values to whatever we encounter, and it brings out a value differentiation, and which side of the conscience mechanism that we add values to, our choices and decisions entrain suitable and even destined results and consequences. And this happens all the time, at each moment of our lifetimes. Yes, we talked about the importance of reaching a neutral line as we go up and down, but we must remember that with each new decision, choosing, incoming influence, the equilibrium gets disrupted again and again. There always be a new movement on that bar magnet. This equilibrium is meant to be disrupted, not reserved in a status quo, after all. Just consider the times all of us are living in. All seemingly balances states of the world is disrupted by this pandemic. And now, who will orient towards positive, who will orient towards negative? It seems that, in near future, some hard tests and trials are waiting us, as humankind tries to restore the balance at a new neutral line. Most of us will be tested by our conscience while we are at ease after supper as our neighbor is hungry. So far, troubles and hardships of people were like TV dramas we watch, and it seems like things will change soon.
Such testing is a constant part of life in the world. Starting from the lowest point of earthly cravings, we witness so many atrocities at individual and also communal levels. I mean, we must remember not only we, as individuals, but also as nations and states are governed by this duality mechanism, so, we are not only tested as individuals but also citizens. After all, nations have their own magnetic field synthesis, and how countries or leaders react or respond to the atrocities, wars, conflicts etc. display their level of conscience. In other words, in which reality is the family of humankind? What is our level? So, we will be tested as a whole, as well.
Yes, let's continue reading. We would like to point out that what people must do regarding comprehending world values is to feed the component of the conscience duality orientated to duty and to retroject the component of earthly cravings. For, as the values are added to the duty component, the gains of the conscience equilibrium within the essence being will increase quickly, and as the higher components are neglected by becoming attached to the earthly craving components, the increase in essence knowledge will decelerate by becoming subject to the automatic advance through other channels, with gradual and arduous applications at great lengths. Therefore, to shorten the path of development and lessen the arduous intervention imperatives as much as possible, it is necessary to attain a level of comprehension as soon as possible to be able to discern the higher and lower components of this mechanism so that comprehension and effort of orientation upwards may be possible. Because of this, we must elaborate on comprehension whose significance is obvious.
The most important topic in this passage is the human condition, which has no comprehension about the fact that we are now deep into earthly cravings. And because we don't know this fact, we cannot think about reaching upwards, to the duty component. If you remember, we had read in the divine order and the universe that, at the initial phases of human stage, of course, the mankind had to encounter the intense levels of the earthly cravings, yet as humans acquired the knowledge of those cruder states, they could reach towards the subtler matter combinations, and of course, we need to remember, again, that everything is matter, and what we call as earthly cravings are cruder matter combinations and states, so, as we learn and complete the cruder realities, we spend efforts to reach towards the subtler states and combinations of matter. Therefore, we can summarize our struggle as becoming more aware of the cruder earthly cravings, and as striving for reaching the subtler states at the higher levels.
For cruder states and realities, we can think examples from the life of primitive men or tribes. Let's say you are from a warrior tribe, pillaging and burning down other villages, killing members of other tribes, raping their women, and you do all of these under a certain degree of automatism. In other words, you are not that aware of what you are doing. Yes, at the human being level, you do what you do for power and survival, yet, as we read in this book, the values added to either component for the aspect addressing the being preoccupied with essence knowledge. So, the being acquires essence knowledge via experiences of human being at either component. Yes, again, as we read in this passage, adding more values to the negative component will decelerate by becoming subject to the automatic advance through other channels, with gradual and arduous applications at great lengths. This does not mean that you and your being does not learn anything from that lifetime. No way. The process is two-sided, as you remember. Yet, adding more values to negative component makes your learning longer, suffering, arduous and subject to an automatic advance. In short, you slow down your development. When you remain too long at that side of the pendulum, hence, in automatism, in order to take you out of this automatism, beings in duty, or if you like, guiding beings and the whole guiding system at the lower steps of the plan of duty get more active to direct us toward our path and to wake us up through bringing out many suffering events. In this passage, as though the plan tells us, in this or that way, all your experiences eventually transform to essence knowledge of your being. You are free to choose from either side of the pendulum, and there is no punishment in this system. However, you will be subject to automatism, and at the end of your lifetime, when your being is at that isolated state of spatium, reliving the consequences of your current choices may feel like hell to you, especially, you judged and condemned yourself for such choices. Still, no matter how hard we human beings make our lifetimes, we see that there are always incoming influences from our being, from beings in duty to nudge us towards elevating the neutral line by making new choices, more conscientious choices. I mean, no being forever remains in such hellish imagery at the spatium phase. It may be felt like eternity, but this is due to the spherical time comprehension that is prevalent there. Therefore, punishment is almost like self-inflicted for the human being. We can track the signs of this tendency in times when we sabotage ourselves, or at points we feel that we deserve such suffering, etc. Because such periods or feelings indicate the parts of us which we are not properly aware of.
Yes, we discover these, actually, ourself, our being in this gradual manner, stage by stage, step by step. As we read in the divine order and the universe, we begin with automatism, but of course, there is always help and assistance coming from the beings in duty. Then we reach a semi-comprehending state. And we can say that we are most of the time automatic and sometimes self-comprehending. Becoming truly comprehending is out of question in this world, after all. Levels of that state begin for the being after reaching the skirts of the plan of duty. Of course, there are beings, albeit so rare, lived in that state, as they lived their lifetime, as being with duty.
And even they were subject to the conditions of the physical body, so much that Jesus Christ had said, "Father, why have you forsaken me?" Even though he was a prophet with a great duty and with comprehension, at the crucifixion, even Jesus was in the illusion of becoming abandoned.
At that moment, he must have felt that he was totally lost in matter. Just imagine how thick the veil of matter over comprehension. And this is also a beneficial example for us. We should not beat ourselves up by saying I couldn't, I was unable, etc. This is world we live in. We will fall and we will stand up, and we will fall again. Again, again and again.
We can take inspiration from babies. They learn to walk after crawling for a long time, and if they stumble or fall and hurt their knees, they don't give up walking. They whine a little but stand up and start walking again. It's like the drive at the background of a being's need for development. Being keeps on building bodies in this crude realm, sometimes falling for the earthly cravings, and sometimes climbing up to the duty, for 500 to 700 lifetimes. Of course, all those lifetimes happen at once for the being's time comprehension is not our linear or superficial time perception. Well, let's continue reading. We mentioned above that the conscience mechanism exists in pre-human beings, naturally, in the most primitive forms, in states of instinctual dualities, and it starts to take its comprehending form at the stage of humanity that only starts with human life. The reason for this is, no doubt, that the power of comprehension has reached its degree particular to the level of humanity. The conscience mechanism at the stage of humanity is adjusted according to the comprehensions. The development of the conscience mechanism in mankind exhibits varying levels, from the simplest level of comprehension to the highest comprehension. All of these indicate that comprehension has a very important status in the development of the conscience mechanism. More correctly, the development of conscience means development of comprehension. In the initial world beings at which the comprehension exists in states of very simple instincts, conscience mechanism exists only according to that level. For example, in plants, which mankind recognized as the initial beings in the world, there exist automatic instincts which are at the simplest state of comprehension. And this, of course, displays a state which is a far cry from the levels of comprehension mankind has. And because of this, they cannot be defined as comprehension. However, these instincts represent comprehension sufficiently in these beings for their life needs. In this context, let us elaborate on the true meaning of comprehension. This is the method of the divine order and the universe. First, the book gives a basic description of a concept, then, mentions or describes that concept in relation to other topics and concepts. Later, revisits the basic version and summarizes the previous descriptions and explanations given until that point, then moves further.
This passage talks about the level of comprehension belonging to the humankind. Of course, the primitive forms of comprehension exist in plants and animals, as well, and we passed through those stages, and now, as being that reached the stage of human, the influences we are engaged with are higher in vibrations. Yes, we passed those stages, and now, together we talk about those stages and phases. Well, I think, this is so precious. We must appreciate the state we are in, because, the knowledge in this book has a high-level vibration, and we can perceive this and we are aware of this level of knowledge, and for the last 33 weeks, we work together to understand it, so can we apply it our daily life, so can we internalize it. This is an indication of our efforts. It indicates that we are spending efforts and super efforts to understand, to comprehend this knowledge and the level of development we are at. Yes, I wanted to express my gratitude for this precious moment in our development.
Yes, soon we will read in the book. Ferment of being is comprehension. That ferment was imbued when a spirit connected to an atom, and we see how, so to speak, it leavened the being, how the comprehension appeared in different forms stage by stage, first, as instincts in plants, then, instincts and intuitions in animals, and finally, in human beings, as automatisms, intuitions, and semi-comprehension. And at this current level of human stage, we utilize instincts, intuitions, automatisms as well. The level we reached consists those realities, after all. Here, the gist of this passage is, the more the comprehension is, the more the conscience, or the higher the level of conscience, the wider the conscience is. So, they go in tandem. I mean, you cannot be comprehending but unconscientious at the same time. And, do you remember what Mr. Erikdal told us? Spirit and matter are the both sides of the fabric. We can use his words for describing the comprehension and conscience, as well. That are the both sides of the fabric. Alright, let's continue reading. Comprehension is a power interconnecting the endless matter systems in the matter universe. However, by making this definition, it should be remembered that as for everything in universe, the cause of this power is also outside the matter universe. So, by this power, relations between matter can be established. And out of these relations the beings, which are the symbols, that is, the representatives of spirits, are manifested. Likewise, by this power, through the critical comparison of relations between plans, developments and evolutions are ensured. Here, there are great truths expressed about comprehension. In order to penetrate these truths, it is necessary to ponder upon these words.
Such a short passage, but how profound, expressing what comprehension is. Comprehension is a power interconnecting the endless matter systems in the matter universe. And the book kindly warns us to remember that the cause of this power is outside of universe, like the cause of everything is. So, the comprehension is such an encompassing power that it makes the connections between matter parts, hence, the development of matter, the emergence of the being, and the stages the being goes through possible. In short, our existential journey. Soon, the book will revisit some concepts we previously read and discussed, so, let me remind our dear friends to watch the previous videos in this series, starting from the first one. Yes, we now read about a magnificent, immense mechanism that is permeated to whole universe, that is interconnecting all matter in the universe. Everything you can think of when I say matter, air, soil, water, all molecules and everything, our bodies, our planet, all other celestial bodies or phenomena, and don't stop there, because, also our emotions, our thoughts, all those subtle and subtler vibrations we cannot sense and even measure. Whatever you can think of is matter. And then try imagining the comprehension as a mechanism that connects all matter. Maybe, this can give us an intuition about the unimaginable capacity of this power. You know very well that the divine order and the universe has a special vocabulary. Its terminology is special in the sense that as we read more, the terms and concepts acquire different and expanding meanings. I think, comprehension is one of these special terms.
And again, the book reminds us that this power is active inside the universe, but the cause of this power is outside of universe. The book implies here the spirits, which are super-universe truths. So, this power is a reflection of the spirits. Just as the being, when built, becoming a symbol, a mirrored reflection, a vehicle of the spirit. And we can only intuit these because of the level of development we are currently at, which is semi-comprehending, at best. And even the plan, as the source of these spiritual communiqués, states that even we cannot know about these super-universe truths. Therefore, they advise us to think and ponder on the comprehension. And this can be a good topic for our next meditation. You know, meditation is not about emptying your mind. We don't want to become mindless but mindful. And one of the meditation methods is to concentrate on a concept. In order to understand, to become more aware of it, to widen our perspective about it, to open ourselves to the incoming influences related to the meanings of that concept. So, let's do this as a homework for this week. Let's meditate on comprehension as this power interconnecting all those infinite matter systems. There are some questions coming from our friends. Here is one. Will we wake up at the spatium with our current consciousness? Will we remember there what you tell us in this series?
No, we will not remember every word, every action, every feeling. Because such details are the appearances related to the physical body and its consciousness. What becomes reflected to the being is a filtered version of all experiences and knowledge we gain here in the world. There are some key events and experiences that influence us so deeply that we reflect the acquires results of such events to our being, and if these results need further processing, our being will be preoccupied with these in the spatium period. Therefore, we can work on the events and experiences that influence us most while we are alive. What makes us very sad, what scares us most, what makes us angry. If we start working on such emotions now, we can be better prepared for the spatium period.
A part of me wants to jokingly tell our friends that memorize what we read today, there will be an exam about these pages in the spatium. Well, we don't carry the worldly knowledge to hereafter. Because of this, we emphasize this fact in our lectures and videos that the important thing is not quantity of knowledge we acquire but quality, that is, how much of this knowledge we can apply in our lifetime. In that sense, what we share and discuss in this series is only a guide to self-knowledge. Pause. Don't become identified with the events you live in. Take a step out of it. Observe your life from outside. Notice the point you are at before making a decision, a choice, or an action. Where are you in the vertical line of the conscience mechanism? Are you automatic as you live your life? If all of your beliefs, emotions, thoughts and feelings will affect your mental and emotional imagery after death, if I will be left alone with my own states and imagery in the spatium, without the defense mechanisms like justifications etc., should I examine my life about my regrets? And it seems that what we didn't is more regretful than what we did. It is better to ask, what are the steps you didn't take? What are the responsibilities you shirked? Yes, the divine order and the universe give us practical clues about our attitudes in life, but this does not mean that we have to memorize its every line and words. Let's imagine that this book is the ferment or yeast, and our life is the milk. How do you ferment this milk to make yogurt? Just by bringing them together causally and praying that it will work? Or, first, by checking the temperature of the milk? This ferment, this influence is always around us, but what is the size of the bowl we pour the milk into? I think, answering such questions may give us many insights about our way of applying this knowledge in our life. Yes, thank you so much, dear friends, for your presence, attendance, and contributions. Wishing you a good week. Hoping to see you next week.
Yes, thank you, dear friends. Your comments and questions are so valuable. Wishing you all a good evening.